There we go. Yeah, so Big Data Analytics was one of the early original meetups, Sydney-based, around the whole subject of big data, back in the day when big data was new, just at the beginning of the hype cycle. Now we've seen it sort of come off the hype cycle and everybody's talking about other things like the exciting world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc., which we'll be hearing more of tonight. I remember presenting at some of the earlier meetings at a pub in Kent Street. Does anybody remember those days? All right, some old-timers. Well, you can see that we've moved up in the world a little bit in terms of the quality of our facilities, thanks to our friends at Westpac, who are sponsoring us. So it was an interesting confluence of events that we have two speakers on the theme of the future of big data, data science, analytics, and machine learning. Anthony will be talking us through how data science has changed just in the last few years. And how what that's going to look like going forward, particularly in terms of our career paths as data scientists. New skills are already in demand, and the future will be even more different from the past than we are right now. What skills will you need to be successful in to navigate this area that may not be on your radar as a data professional right now? Similarly, the whole realm of machine learning and automated machine learning is rapidly emerging. We're right at the beginning of the curve, I think, in terms of AI and process automation and the productivity revolution that we're going to see out of that. I actually have a keynote on that whole thing, which I won't even go into right now because it'd be a lot of fun, but maybe at the next meetup or the one after. However, back to the subject of artificial intelligence, we'll be hearing from David Dre, who is the CEO of Anadot. Fantastic to have David with us all the way from Israel. He's here for a couple of weeks. From here he goes to Silicon Valley, and then he goes back home and sees his family. Just while we're on the subject of meetups, there are a few others, and I like to cross-pollinate a little bit. We are a community. A lot of us know each other quite well. Data Science Sydney is another one of these meetups. Data Science Sydney meets on the 4th Tuesday of every month, and we meet on the 3rd Tuesday of every month, or at least we're trying to establish that pattern. And we'll have complementary sets of speakers and presenters. Data Science Melbourne, they're ahead of us. Can you believe it? 11,000 members. We need to do something about that. So this meetup crossed just 7,000 members in the last few weeks, partly as a result of people subscribing for this meeting. So our target is 11,000. We've got to beat the Melbourne guys, right? Data Science Breakfast Meetup. Anthony, could you just stand up real quick? Anthony runs the Data Science Breakfast Meetup. If you can get out of bed early on a Friday morning, you get some excellent speakers. And then Data Visualization Sydney is also one that Anthony runs. And then there's a few more specialised meetups. Deep Learning Sydney, Sydney Users of R Forum or SURF, run by Eugene Dabasarski, one of my partners. Sydney Data Engineering, and then another one which I also run, Data Analytics and AI in Banking and Finance. We haven't met for 18 months either, so I'm about to get that one kicked off. In fact, yeah, we had a small meeting last week. Thanks to our sponsor Westpac, and particularly to Angela Chin and Gethrin. Just give us a little wave. These guys put in a lot of hard work. They're probably not even in the room. Put in, thank you, yes. Who's standing at the back with, what is it, a gold? Excellent. Yes, thank you. We really appreciate it. It's a fantastic facility. This is probably not only the best facility we've had for a long time, but the smoothest in terms of bringing people into the building, getting registered, getting upstairs and getting seated. So fantastic. Thank you to Westpac. And on that note, I will hand over to our first speaker, Anthony.
All right. Hi, everyone. Still my dog's up there. All right. Let's see if I can get rid of this full screen. Awesome. Great. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Very excited to speak at this meetup that's now been revived. I think the last time I was at Sydney Big Data Analytics was about 4 years ago. So I know there might have been some in between, but that was the last one I was at. Great to see such a good turnout. Just quickly, so I'm going to try a few things in this talk that I haven't tried before, so bear with me. Live stuff obviously never goes as well as when you practice. But essentially, whenever I talk, and those of you who attend the breakfast meetup, like Barone, Corey, etc., and I'm sure a few other familiar faces, know that I like to keep things as interactive as possible. So I'm going to be doing a couple live polls, so we'll see how that goes. Just quickly, who am I? Why am I here? So I am a director at a company, startup called Verge Labs. And so what we do, just very briefly, is we build data products to solve business problems. Not going to go into any more detail than that. If you're interested to find out more, go to our website or speak to me afterwards. In terms of community, as Mark mentioned, been running the Data Science Breakfast Meetup since I think around 2015. Had I think over 50 or 60 events, which is pretty cool. We've been fairly consistent, lots of experimentation, different things, as well as Data Visualization Sydney, which is part of this kind of, which this meetup's part of as well, is the Data Science Sydney kind of consortium of meetups in Sydney. And the one I bolded there is super new. I actually had the logo up on the first slide, the Sydney AI Hub. This is we had our launch party a month ago. It's actually just up the road at Millers Point, just kind of towards the rocks. And it's Sydney's first co-working space for AI, machine learning, data companies. So if you work in a startup or you're part of a corporate that's interested to learn more about AI and data science, again, let me know. We do have a website, but there's a lot of stuff in development because it's all new. So let's have a chat about it. But yeah, certainly if you're a startup and you want to work with and since around 2013 started calling myself a data scientist. So when I give a talk around data science is different now, I'm talking compared to when I started, or at least in the last few years. So let's try this. This is something, again, I think it would be really interesting for me to also be able to kind of gauge the level of everyone in the room. I have to open it up first, so bear with me. So I've only ever seen this done. I haven't done it myself. Where's my... Okay. So if you go to... I'll bring it back up in a second. Start. Great. So now, if we go back across there, if you jump, so obviously not everyone's going to do this, but I'd appreciate it if you do. We'll get a better, cross-section of the room. If you go to this link and type in the event code, you should be able to do it pretty quickly on your phone. Zoom in. You should get that poll. Let me know if you have any issues. Let me copy paste this so we can have it up while we see the results come through. Awesome. So yeah, if you still need the address, it's up there. Great. And yeah, which best describes you? I'm realizing I'm not going to get everyone perfectly here. I was chatting, I don't know where he's sitting, I was chatting to Dimitar before, who's a data philosopher. I was considering putting that up there just because I knew he would be the one person who said that. But also, there you are. But also if there were any other data philosophers in the room, he'd have some competition in that very, very niche market. All right, so, starting to get to a good cross-section. So obviously I seem to have chosen decent categories because they're fairly broadly covered. And I mean, for what it's worth, my prior was that there'd be a lot of aspiring data scientists, data analysts, and people just interested in data analytics and AI. But it's good to see some experienced data scientists here as well as data business people who I'm thinking a lot of what I'll be talking about will be applicable when you're hiring and thinking about building teams and also how to work with your data scientists. So, all right, let's stop that for now. And get back. 6301. Yeah. All right, let's present again. Okay, so quick outline, just very briefly, how can we define data science today? What's changed? And a few recommendations. Again, those of you who've heard me speak before, I have a bunch of opinions. Take it all with a grain of salt. Get angry, whatever, ask me questions. The recommendations are really aimed at data scientists and people working with data scientists, which luckily covers most of you. So, what is data science? Here we go again. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen this, what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, etc. What I actually do, select spending from DB users, etc. Still funny after so many years. Other definitions? One's a joke, one's not as much of a joke. Yeah, data analysts working in Silicon Valley, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that. And then the kind of Drew Conway definition, which is one that I've always kind of thought about quite a lot. And I mean, in one sense, you kind of think of that, the middle of that Venn diagram as being like the unicorn type data scientist, but you know, everyone who works in data science generally has a mix of some of these things. But again, you know, it's always changing. So again, rather than the whole what is data science and you know, beat that all one again, let's think about what does practicing data science involve. I thought this one was actually kind of good, honestly. It's a lot of stuff. So, I mean, some people can say that, you know, they cover all these things. Certainly in my career, I've touched most of these. But there's a ton in there. There's like so much. Cloud computing, AI, NLP, you know, databases, it just goes on. And then they're the skills, but you know, it's a one perspective, but honestly, it does tend to cover a whole lot of this stuff. But you know, it's the unicorn. If you've got someone who's across all these things, they don't really exist, do they? So I don't know, South Park fans. I think practicing data science often feels like this. So the context for this is, I think it's like Wall Street type thing, gave the guy some money and it's gone. So like, you know, you learn something new, you read a blog, you hear about a new technique, you learn a new language, and it's like, the next thing's already come. So it does feel a lot like this sometimes. So a bit more pragmatically, what does practicing data science involve today? And I think there's some clear, solid things that have emerged. So that's really what I'll be talking about. All right, another poll. It's the last poll, I promise. What do you think of when you hear the phrase data science? Again, let me just activate it. And again, here's the address if you've lost it. Really? Oh, this is so much fun. Just give it another 20, 30 seconds. All right. Yeah, so, I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd probably say the Drew Conway definition just out of those options, or I'd just say other, which is totally unhelpful, but, you know, it's hard to define, right? Interesting to see that first one, because that's actually what I'm going to talk about next. So, the media perspective. The stuff we all see on, and I don't just mean, you know, like mass media, talking about social media, you know, even what people talk about to an extent. So yeah, the whole sexiest job of the 21st century. I mean, they've been trotting that one out for the last, I don't know how many years, probably since the turn of the century. This one's overlapped a bit, but the whole, this is the McKinsey, I think, came up with this, the demand for analytic skills, obviously brought about this kind of deluge of people wanting to get into data science. This one, not so much a beef with Einstein or anything like that, but just this whole idea of best practice as if that's actually a thing in data science yet. Yeah, so again, best practice. This is from an Australian company, I won't mention who. And yeah, I think, this is someone on my LinkedIn feed, just kind of with all this like, here's all the stuff that you should know based on this resource that I found. And then again, like, a lot of this kind of sentiment that you see a lot, which I'll talk a bit about job descriptions, but, the fact that you have to have a PhD or you have to have a master's. And then this whole, again, this is probably you see it more on social media, but I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is the 2019 one for data science. And there's a whole lot of companies in there, even in the like top quadrant, leaders and visionaries, or leaders, I guess, complete of vision, ability to execute. Again, nothing against any of the software, but I don't use any of it. I don't necessarily recommend it. Again, that's my perspective, but this is the kind of stuff that people are seeing a lot of, and so it tends to influence the perspective. So, what I'm saying here, data science has changed. So again, back to Gartner, wonderful Gartner. I do actually really like their hype cycle. It's just so accurate in so many different areas. So, those of you who aren't familiar with it, that's it on the left. And we can certainly say data science has like been through every single, it's been there and back, and it should really be on that kind of productivity piece, and a lot of the time it is, but you're also seeing stuff where there's like, data science is this new thing, or we don't like data scientists because they haven't provided value. You really see this full spectrum, particularly here in Sydney. But really what has changed, I couldn't help putting that first one in because we were at a big data analytics meetup. I spent years of my life working with Hadoop, so joke's on me, but not that I didn't enjoy it. We don't hear that much about Hadoop anymore, a lot more about cloud, AWS, GCP, Azure, etc. R, seen a meteoric rise in adoption. Sure, a lot of you work with R. Python, again, written up in The Economist. I think there's Stack Overflow surveys and things where it just shows, how it's grown year on year. I think after JavaScript, I think it's just about the most popular programming language out there. And then, cloud. And MLOps. So I guess various tools, vendors and things coming in various parts of the kind of data science pipeline to automate and make things easier. So again, what has not changed is the media hype around the field of data science. I've talked about that already. So why I'm up here, partly, I think, is it's an important problem that we, as a community, should be talking about. So I've kind of narrowed it down. Well, it's not just me, and I have credits at the end of this. But I've narrowed it down to two things that we see. One, oversupply of junior data scientists, and two, mismatched expectations. So, glut of junior data scientists. So, just quick show of hands. Who here knows a data scientist looking for a job? Don't be shy. Put up your hand if you don't know a data scientist looking for a job. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. All right. My company, just anecdotally, we always hear from recruiters, other data scientists looking for work. A lot of people offering to do unpaid work, unpaid internships and things like that. We don't hire juniors, so it's not even applicable for, I can only imagine what it's like for, Westpac, for example. The amount of applications they must be getting when they have large teams of analytical people. This one's kind of interesting. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Andrew Ng. So he has a company called deeplearning.ai. And I just like this tweet where he's like, yeah, thanks also everyone who previously tried to volunteer. So they said, we're hiring, and people were like, we'll just do it for free, just let us in, you know? And then again, I think the quality of applicants they got was probably so high that it fueled a ton of growth. So in 10 months, they outgrew their space. So yeah. So yeah, look, it's hard to estimate the gap. Here's, again, one other kind of starting point. So this is in the US, but study of job ads said there are about 10,000 vacancies at a particular time. And more than 100,000 people have started the Fast AI course. So I think this is in 2018 when they said this. So year on year, it's more and more. So, you know, even if only around 7% complete the course, you know, there's a lot of supply coming through. Obviously, Fast AI isn't the only way to learn data science. It's pretty good, though, if any of you have tried it. Specific to deep learning. But yeah, there's a ton of ways to get into data science. And again, I'm not going to tell you which is good or bad or anything, but there's a lot of ways. So you've got your MOOCs, so Fast AI, Coursera, Udemy, Udacity, and a lot more, Data Camp, etc. You've got boot camps. So here in Australia or Sydney, we've got General Assembly, Academy Chi, Prescient, of course. You know, they take cohorts. Every 12 weeks there's a new cohort of students. You've got remote degrees, which I know some people are doing. On-site undergraduate degrees, certainly UNSW are offering a degree. I'm not sure at the undergraduate level, but I know there's certainly master's programs at, you know, the other big universities in Sydney. A lot of PhDs who come from different backgrounds, you know, absolutely excellent at working with data, and are moving into data science because there's jobs or perceived jobs, and interesting problems to solve. And I mean, YouTube, also a resource. Siraj Ravel, if anyone knows him, has some good courses up there. But I mean, I think this is pretty interesting as well. Just, you know, just a couple of things. I mean, there's lots of these, but so here, data science in practice class at UC San Diego. 500 students. This one's insane. I mean, I don't know if you can really see, but I think this is at Caltech. But yeah, fall semester 2018, day one. That hall holds 2,000 people, and it's packed. So, you know, while there's certainly demand, that's why we're all here, partly, there's a lot of people coming in. So why is this an issue? So Jeff Hinton, father of deep learning, really interesting statement from him. We should be going for radically new ideas. We know a radically new idea in the long run is going to be much more influential than a tiny improvement. That's the downside when we only have a few senior guys and a gazillion juniors. This one I think is particularly pertinent with a lot of the people I speak to. I mean, it's a catch-22. To get a data science job, you need experience. How do you get experience? From having a data science job. And it's really, really hard. So, I mean, I've had people at meetups, you know, come to me in tears and say, like, what do I do? It's, you know, I sympathize. There's also a race to the bottom, I think. So quality versus quantity. This is one thing I believe fairly strongly. You know, data science is a technology position. And, you know, what we do is scalable. One algorithm can affect millions of people in some cases. You know, I like to use the example of Google. You know, it's never a perfect example, but certainly a lot of their core IP and a lot of their competitive difference, you know, was built by a small core team. But, you know, lots of different examples, I think. I guess also, maybe there's a little cynical, but, you know, when the average reduces, when the quality reduces, you know, it kind of flattens things out a bit, and the people who tend to then rise aren't necessarily the best data scientists. It's more people who are better at kind of, gaming how they rise through organizations and things like that. And people who know how to sell, which, don't get me wrong, or communicate, which is totally an important core skill. But again, you kind of need the chops. And this is also a really interesting one, which I haven't heard for a while, but certainly something that when I was practicing in a team of data scientists, data engineers, was absolutely the case, is this idea that you should have multiple data engineers for every one data scientist. It's often a lot harder to move the data, get it in the right form, get everything flowing nicely, well, not harder, but more work, and then the one single data scientist or smaller group of data scientists then work with that. Again, haven't heard that much recently, but I think it's still valid. Okay, so that was the, I guess, influx of junior data scientists. The other thing is job requirements. So most of you, I think, who've looked for data science jobs or hired have probably felt this. The sheer frustration at how inaccurate job descriptions can be, and this is totally a global thing. So, the topic of this talk is data science has changed. Has that necessarily changed? No. But, before I think they were unrealistic, and now it's, also a bit obsolete a lot of the time. This is a really good article that I read a couple days ago, which I just thought I'd share a couple points from. So this was a junior or graduate level data scientist in Singapore who just wrote a story. He just said, well, hey, I'm trying to do what it's telling me to do in these job descriptions, and I'm not getting a job. So why don't I find some data on who is? And so scraped LinkedIn, pulled out data on about 1,000 people practicing as data scientists in Singapore, and this is what he found. So the key things really, turns out most data science, and again, this is Singapore, it's not Sydney, but there's obviously a lot of similarities. So most data scientists have postgraduate degrees, so a master's, a PhD, and one of his key insights was a MOOC won't get you a job. Personally, I'm a big fan of MOOCs, but by itself, probably not enough. Researcher, software engineer, analyst, or data science intern, that helps if you had that experience. If you have already practiced as a data scientist, much better. And most data science positions are new, which is also interesting because that's certainly something I've seen here. People who work in data science roles don't necessarily stay around for that long. And there's a multitude of reasons for that, and I'm not going to talk about it in this talk, but it's interesting. It's a lot of churn. Again, back to the kind of media emphasis, the curriculums, the media, et cetera, are emphasizing, which is why I made that comment when the 100% deep learning came up. Machine learning, deep learning, certainly big data, things like GPU computing. I mean, the list goes on. That's what's emphasized. Is that really the core skill that you need as a data scientist? A bit of it helps, but the whole kind of, and I'm sure you've all heard this 100 times, the 80-20 thing. You have to learn how to clean and shape data. You need to learn how to move it. You need to learn how to work with it. A couple of things that I think are also really important are just being able to collect data and build your own data sets. And then, one thing that you see a lot as well in the kind of data science, I don't know if you call it community, but blogosphere, around productionizing work. So, this is something I believe in pretty strongly. A report is not necessarily a great output when it's a model and it's live. Better off having something that works as part of a system. But again, lots of different use cases. And just this tweet, there was a poll this is by Vicky Boykus, who actually wrote a blog post called, which I'll talk about at the end, but it's just called Data Science is Different Now, and a lot of this content comes from that post. And she obviously believes it strongly as well, and did a poll on Twitter, has a really impressive group of kind of Twitter followers, and they're like, yeah, cleaning data, pretty key. Another kind of trend is data science is kind of moving closer to engineering in a sense. I when I say data science, it can mean so many different things. So again, take it with a grain of salt to an extent. But overall, I find really effective people are working on actually, again, productionizing, doing end-to-end data science. Don't get me wrong, visualizations. Mark mentioned I help run the data visualization meetup. I think it's crucial, but seeing a bit less core skill sets around things like visualization, statistics, and more from the traditional CS route. So things like, you see more things like continuous integration, CI/CD, unit testing, things like that, which, 5 years ago I'd heard of because I worked in software teams, but I was like, I don't really need to worry about that. They'll do that. But it's just becoming more and more part of the workflow. Unsurprisingly, they just kind of bolt this on to other things you need to know. So I couldn't help myself. I just jumped onto LinkedIn and just clicked on jobs and had a look at what's out there at the moment. This is as of, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. And this was the third one down. Like, it's good validation. It means I'm not really in an echo chamber when I'm saying this stuff. The first two jobs there were looking for academics in any sense, so different types of requirements. I think this is insane. I don't know if anyone has any different opinions, but this is an entry. Okay, so there's 53 applicants, so it's popular. It's an entry-level position, which is very interesting because as an entry-level data scientist, you need to be able to handle large-scale end-to-end data science projects. End-to-end. Proven experience in translating business challenges into data pipelines and model framework. Not convinced data pipelines is necessary. It's certainly in some roles, but not in all data science roles. In this one, clearly it is, but I don't know how you're meant to get proven experience if it's an entry-level job. Machine learning techniques, mice, scikit-learn, curious or weaker. Mice is a technique. The other three are packages, so not quite sure what's going on there. By the way, I've never used mice. It might be good. I don't know. Of course, big data. Hive, Hadoop, Spark. Also, you need to be able to communicate. There's a lot of other stuff in there. Big bonus points if you know Scala, because, Scala's a particularly difficult programming language. It's really useful and all that. If you're working in Spark, probably get away with Python. Anyway, not gonna. You get where I'm coming from. All right, yeah. Don't take me too literally here. Given there's 50, sometimes 100, sometimes 200 people for each junior role, is it the best use of your time? Do you have the best chance of making it if you're competing like that? Don't go through that usual route. Don't do what everyone else is doing because it won't differentiate you. Only the very best are really able to effectively differentiate themselves when it comes to pure data science. And again, I've got an inverted commas. Don't ask me to define it. But what I mean is, of course you can differentiate yourself when you bring in other elements. Whether it be things like design or, project management or, I don't know, lots of different things. But when it's like, okay, I've done 1,000 Kaggle competitions, it's like, yeah, so does everyone else. There's only so many ML problems. What about the rest of the stack? The market's evolving. We don't need more junior data scientists. Okay, hammered that point home enough, I think. But I guess what I'm getting at is I think it's easier to come into a data science career kind of through the back door. So starting out as a junior developer or in DevOps, project management, or as a data analyst. So at the beginning I asked the question, who's a data analyst / aspiring data scientist? Then I think it is to apply kind of point blank for 5 positions that everyone else is doing. And it will take longer, but bear in mind, and I'll go into this in the next slide, is there's a whole lot of other skills that are an important part of doing data science, which you'll pick up. So, more optimistically, prioritize a modern skill set. So what I mean by that, and I use the word future-proof, and I mean, I say that fully aware of the fact that we as human beings are horrible at predicting anything even more than 1 year in the future, but in any case, there's certainly certain things that kind of stand the test of time. So just a quick list. Communication, as I mentioned, you're never going to regret that. You might not end up as the world's greatest data scientist, but whatever you do, generally, it's a good skill to have. And so if you're not good at it, which I certainly, earlier in my career, I mean, you can argue that I'm not good at it still, but I really wasn't good at it earlier in my career, and I forced myself to get better at it. It's a plug for Mark. I know he's doing a lot of public speaking related things as well, so, doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, it's useful stuff. Product skills, UX and design skills, certainly. I mean, they say UX is king. Passion and lifelong learning, I mean, this again comes any kind of tech job, any job really, I think that it's useful. But what I think particularly around that lifelong learning piece is what I found is where you can, you're never going to be across everything, but where you have enough kind of understanding of what's out there to be able to pick the right tool or the right kind of tool for the job that you're solving, you tend to save a lot of time and be a lot more effective. And then, it's tech, so doers and makers, useful. Actually do stuff, not just theory. But okay, so what about technical skills? Because those are all softish kind of skills. Code agnostic, so what I mean by that is, you don't need to know Scala and Java and Python and everything else, Unix. The idea is that you're not scared of learning new code. If you need to use something, then it's like, cool, I'll learn that. Won't take me that long. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there now as well, which make, you don't have to code for. You can do some really interesting, useful data science without it. But at least today, and I mean, this isn't as much a talk about the future as a talk about the present, generally, you need to learn how to code. What I mean by NCDS is this kind of running joke I had when I was consulting with some clients who had these data scientists, but they didn't code at all. And so it's like non-coding data scientists. It's like an oxymoron. And yeah, I mean, I know I was bashing stats before, but like, you need to know stats. Like, no way around it. You're always going to be able to have to prove and validate your findings. But again, not really the subject of this talk. I quite like this tweet, and I also kind of like the fact that it was like, how many presentations can I slide it into? But this is essentially what it boils down to. And I mean, we can call it any kind of fancy word like machine learning engineer or, data philosopher or whatever. But, ultimately you have to be able to take a business question, turn it into a business answer via a route of, data, ultimately. And I guess finally, just to kind of take all that high-level stuff that I was saying, here's just some skills that I think are, it's like the baseline. You don't need to be that unicorn, but standard is, SQL, learn a programming language well, and then, as I say, it doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, obviously there's some that are, Python and R are the two main ones that people are using, so you're generally better off because there's a community and, people you work with will be using it. But the idea is that you can, if that all changes tomorrow because there's a new deep learning framework that's everyone using, then the idea is that you can switch. Cloud is just like the thing now. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And build something. So, I mean, I'll share this deck afterwards, but this just links to a really good blog post that I gave a talk on about a year ago, I think, which was called the cold start problem. And it's just like, again, aspiring data scientist, what do I do? And it's like, collect some data, do a cool model, be able to talk about it. You'll learn so much more than doing a MOOC or just reading about it. And that's it. So again, credit to Vicky, and by all means check out that link, because it wasn't just her stuff, but this is a good blog post. And yeah, just in terms of questions, I always like to have this up at the end, which is your first question should be a question. And you shouldn't have to have a second one. So thank you.
Now, this is going to be very dangerous, but I am going to open for questions. I saw this hand first.
Hi, quick question about you observe that data scientists are increasingly needing to be engineers as much as scientists. Would you say that reflects a maturing of the application of the sort of scientific investigation of data into real products, that are then needing to be competitive, and therefore you're driving lower costs and better performance rather than just a new idea?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's a few different ways you can take it. In that particular context, that's exactly what I'm saying. So there's a movement towards data products. Generally, data scientists have to work with engineers anyway, so it's better if you've got an idea. But also, that focus towards being able to kind of automate, recycle, build on what's before, rather than kind of start from scratch every time, or like wait for the data and do something. I think that's what I'm getting at there.
Good question. I like it. Any others? We're all very shy. In that case, I will not. Okay, we have one.
Okay, I'm not going to say why this time, so as a data philosopher, but it would be interesting to see what is the right time to start with taking some tools, because I think that we are focusing too much on tools,
yep,
unnecessary, but when the hype starts, I guess it's too early to predict like what is going to happen and
yep,
how much time we're going to waste. So what's your observation of the right time to pick?
Sure.
So I guess it's too late to have too many.
Yeah, well, there's always a risk when you pick something, So let's use the example of Hadoop, because I mentioned that I spent a lot of time working with Hadoop. When I first heard about it, I was like, this is the thing. Like, I've spent so much of my time waiting for models to run and waiting for data to load, and like all of a sudden I can distribute it and it'll just be quick. And I saw it in practice, and I was like, this is the thing I want to learn. And let's put it this way, I don't regret any of that. So, I'd say tongue-in-cheek now, like, yeah, I wasted all that time and I should just, jump on AWS and all that. But I learned so much about, command line programming, just the way that data is stored in various ways, tools like Spark, which are still useful. It's hard, right? I'm saying future-proof your career, learn tools that are going to be around in a few years, and like, who knows? But if you don't get any better by not trying, I guess. So, different people have different approaches. So, some might be very broad and just try a lot of things. Others might go, I really want to be an expert at this thing. And all I'm saying is, probably as you just said, don't stick to the tools as much, or even the techniques, but rather it's more concepts, and areas, I think.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
The essence, and never forget the why.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. We're going to have a short 5-minute break, just so you can use the facilities if you need to. Please don't go home. The best is yet to come. We'll be hearing from David shortly, and I've got a surprise at the beginning. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.